So I'm gonna get started. Um, Again, welcome everybody. My name is Pammy. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the preserve naturalist and educator here at the Albany Pine Bush Preserve. We're here tonight to talk about bird identification. And since we have so many people that are interested in a really good big crowd tonight, we're going to have a part two to answer any questions that you have about what I talk about tonight. So please use the Q&A box to ask any questions during the presentation, and that part two will be on Monday, January 27th at 7 p.m. Wendy dropped a link in the chat to register for that. So you can register for that now or at the end of the webinar. Once the webinar is done, a pop-up screen will come up and give you an opportunity to register as well. And I'll remind you again at the end, just in case you forget. But try to just keep putting them in during the presentation as we go along so you don't forget. I'm so glad to see so many people tonight who are interested in birds and the pine bush. So let's get started. All right. So let me see. Wendy, are we seeing the presentation or my
No, you have to switch it.
notes?
No.
All right. Better? Thanks.
Perfect.
So welcome everybody. Winter is a really great time to learn how to identify birds. The leaves are off the trees, so it's easier to see them. And there are less birds around here in the Northeast, so it's easier to identify individual bird sounds and things like that. So this bird right here is a chipping sparrow that's flying out of a crab apple. So first, let me just tell you a little bit about the globally rare, nationally significant, and locally distinct Albany Pine Bush Preserve. The entire preserve is covered with sand. So you might wonder, how did all that sand get here? So about 21,000 years ago, most of New York State was covered in a glacier, and the pine bush was part of the greater glacial Lake Albany sandbelt. So when that glacier started melting, it left behind a lake that extended from present day Glens Falls all the way down to Newburgh. It was about 175 miles long and 90 at its deepest points. It had creeks and rivers and streams flowing into it, including the Mohawk River. And that lake eventually drained, and we were left with all these sandy deposits, which you can kind of see here in these peachy colors. As that lake drained and deposited sand, the Albany Pine Bush ended up to be a really special place because the prevailing winds from the northwest blew, and rather than having a flat sand plain like most of the other parts of this sand plain have, the sands here got blown into an inland dune field. So that's pretty cool and really special. And even though the sand is dry and nutrient poor, plants began to grow and cover the dunes, like the pitch pines and the scrub oaks, and they're still here today. So plants have adapted to these conditions with strong, deep root systems and relationships with fungi and bacteria to get those nutrients that are in the soil out of the soil. This topographic map kind of shows what it looks like up above, really showing you those U-shaped sand dunes, which is pretty cool. There aren't many inland sand dune fields. You usually see dune fields like this on the coast, but this one's pretty cool since it's located right here in the middle of Albany. And the pine bush supports a really unique vegetation community on top of this unique geology. It's called a northeastern interior pine barrens ecosystem, and it's a real biodiversity hotspot. It supports the best remaining global example of an inland pitch pine scrub oak barrens, which is a vegetation community where restoring and maintaining. Um, so um, these little S1, G2, S2, G3 numbers are ranks by nature serve. So S1 means that there are less than 5 occurrences in the state, and G2 is a global rank of 2, which means that there are less than 20 occurrences of this kind of ecosystem globally. Um, the Pine Bush is also a type locality for the endangered Carner blue butterfly. And it also contains really cool pine bush vernal ponds. So these communities all together support thousands of species. Many of them are considered at risk by state and federal agencies, and evidence suggests that more than 25,000 acres of barrens originally existed. It can look different ways. It's called a disturbance dependent habitat. So in any given point, it can be in one of these successional variants. So if we start out on the far left, that's what we would call a successional northern sandplain grassland. And this is what we see a lot of times after we do locust removal from the pine bush. Next in line is the pitch pine scrub oak barrens, and that's kind of our sweet spot where we really are aiming to keep. Um, if we go a little bit beyond that, we get kind of a pitch pine scrub oak thicket, where the scrub oak gets more dominant. And if we get even more tree canopy, then that would turn into a pitch pine oak forest. And in any given year, these communities would kind of be moving across the landscape. And depending upon the frequency of disturbance, those changes will happen. And historically, these disturbances came in the form of fire. Um, the pine bush is not exactly what it used to look like. Um, Back in its heyday when that glacier first receded and the sand was blown up into all those dunes. Um, we estimate that the community here was between 25 and 50,000 acres in size, and we've got a little over 3,400 acres protected right now as part of the pine bush today. Most of the original habitat has been lost to development. Um, for example, this is a picture of the Cross Gates Mall, which is located right inside of the pine bush. Other development, even in some of the green spaces, um, things have become degraded. Some of that is even due to fire suppression because remember, like I just said, the pine bush is fire dependent. It definitely is disturbance dependent, and we use fire just like historically happened. Um, so another thing that happens is when we aren't managing it, invasive species can move in and kind of take over areas, and that requires even more management. So we do a lot. Land use change led to a lot of significant impacts like fragmentation. Um, and that really made the community's change. So giving you an idea of what it looked like historically and what it looks like today. This is a map from the 1950s, and you can see some of those darker areas. Those are actually areas where wildfires were still occurring in the 1950s. I'm going to overlay a more recent aerial photo just to show you how that landscape has changed. This yellow line is kind of the Pine Bush study area, what we're looking at now. Um, One thing that you can notice right away is that the thruway cuts right through the middle of the Pine Bush. That's the I-90 there. Route 55, Route 155, or New Carner Road, kind of cuts it east to west. And the Cross Gates Mall is right down here in the corner. Um, the landfill is right in the middle of the pine bush. You can see it if you go on the Carner Barrens Yellow Trail. Um, and we also have some really cool things. Like right here, we have the Discovery Center and some trails. We actually have 12 trailheads with over 20 miles of trails. So there's still some big pieces of pine bush left, but it's very fragmented and divided up. So we're trying to manage it to keep that pine bush going. We do a lot of work here to try to maintain what little pine bush we have left. And so sometimes it might look a little bit dramatic when we're doing something like taking out a black locust clone. Um, but then it will revert back to that beautiful pitch pine scrubbuck barrens that you see in that right bottom corner. We use fire. Um, we use silvicultural treatments. And when we really have problems with invasive species, we sometimes even use a little bit of herbicides, but really, really targeted. So, the pine bush ecosystem supports a really large number of species of greatest conservation needs. Um, it has a lot of rare wildlife. So, species of greatest conservation need, or SGCN, is a term that is used when species are determined by New York State DEC to be in need of some kind of conservation assistance. This includes state endangered and threatened species and other species that might not persist on the landscape without some kind of help. So, the latest state wildlife action plan from 2015 designated 366 species of greatest conservation need in New York. And since 1980, we have documented 74 of those species in the Pine Bush Preserve. So that's about 20% of the SGCNs in New York State. Um, you might not be surprised to learn that of those 74 species, 46 of them are birds. And these are a few of them here. A lot of rare and cool birds live here in the Pine Bush, and that has earned us both the New York State DEC designation as a bird conservation area, and we've also been named an Audubon important bird area. So that means that we have to be a migratory concentration site. We have to have diverse species and that we have some species that are at risk um, and some range restricted species. So all those criteria kind of work together to get the pine bush these designations. It also means that we do a bunch of research with birds in the preserve. We use them as indicators of success or lack of success with our management in a way. And look at it as ways to see what our restoration efforts might be doing. We do things called point counts. This map here is showing you where we go, and at each one of these points, we listen and take data on all the birds that we hear singing, calling, or any birds that are seen in a 10-minute period. And that gives our science team a rudimentary idea of which bird species are where. And if we want to dig a little bit deeper and find out if birds are successfully reproducing here and returning, we do things like bird banding when we're marking individual birds to see if they are coming back to the preserve. So for example, um, this little thing in the red circle is a band that we put on the birds when we do bird banding. The birds are captured in nets, then they're carefully removed and brought back to the banding station where this uniquely numbered band is placed on their leg. The bander reports where and when the each bird is banded, how old it is, what sex it is, the wing length, feather wear, and a bunch of other information that helps us learn more about the birds using the preserve. And another thing that we're really grateful for is our community scientists. They have helped a lot. Recently, they help with surveys for some of our rare species like eastern whippoorwills, American woodcocks, and common nighthawks. And I'm just going to focus a little bit on that community science work. If you're interested in helping us with any of this, you can sign up on our website for the training sessions, and I'll share that at the end of the presentation. Um, community science projects are really mutually beneficial opportunities. They help the community scientists to learn, and they also help us to learn from the community scientists and what they find out when they're out in the field. They're kind of our extra ears and eyes on the ground, helping us survey for some of these rare species. They also get to be part of the research here and see kind of the backside of what we're trying to accomplish. For example, our American woodcock surveys, they go out, and these green points are where we have them go on to do a trailside survey, and where they listen right at dusk for the songs and watch for the displays of the males of the American woodcock, which are pretty entertaining. So that's one community science thing that we do. Our community science also help us to survey for eastern whippoorwills. These are also trailside surveys for the most part. So both the American woodcock and the eastern whippoorwills are species of concern, and they're in decline across the range. So we really understand what they're doing here in the pine bush. So we use that same kind of system here, except on these surveys, you go out at night when the full moon is up and look for these whippoorwills. And this is a really cool kind of recovery story. They hadn't been heard in the pine bush, and one of our community scientists actually heard one when they were doing another community science project. And then we went out and looked for them and found them, and we have determined over a few years that they are actually back and breeding in the pine bush, hopefully. So that's really cool. And finally, another bird-related community science project that we do in the fall, the Hudson Mohawk Bird Club does a survey at the end of August for migrating common nighthawks. So as they fly over the Discovery Center, participants come and sit in the parking lot with their scopes and they count how many common nighthawks they see. I can't say enough about how participatory science benefits everyone involved, and community scientists are just amazing people, and we can't thank them enough for what they help us to do. So back to the main reason that you're all here tonight, birds. Watching birds can be really fun, and your efforts can really make a difference for scientists and for bird conservation. Um, as we know, birds need food, water, and shelter and space in order to live. And so do we. So many times they live off of those same resources that we do. And if they stop coming to an area, we might be alerted that something's wrong with the food or the water or something like that. And it's actually been proven by studies that watching birds can be beneficial for your health. So there's lots of good reasons to watch birds. And please remember, if you have any questions, just put them in the Q&A box and we'll answer them in part two. And you can sign up for that at the end or during this, Wendy put a link in the chat. So I'm going to use basically talk about the 4 keys to bird identification that are recommended by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology for identifying birds by sight. This is a pretty simple way to do it. And I'll also talk a little bit about identifying birds by sound later. So the 4 things that we really look at are size and shape. Size and shape are one of the most powerful tools to identify birds. Um, we'll look at color pattern, what the main colors were, and you really want to just focus on patterns and try instead of trying to look at the colors of every feather. We also look at behavior. What was the bird doing? They have unique ways of moving and acting, sitting and flying. So it really helps us to look at what they're doing and their attitude. Um, You'll spend, I'm sure, a lot of time watching birds once you get into it. So just relax and try to let the bird tell you who it is by what it's doing. You also will look at the habitat, and that's one thing that will help you when you want to narrow down your list. It's kind of the first and the last question that you ask yourself when you're identifying birds. And sometimes you can even, when you go out, get yourself a list of what the birds are most likely to be in the place that you're going, and that will help you too. So size and shape. Birds come in a lot of different sizes and shapes, and they can be grouped by those similar shapes, so that can help you. So sometimes you want to just look at birds that you know or recognize, and then you can decide on shapes by looking at that. A good thing to do is to become familiar with the different silhouettes of birds, because a lot of times you won't see a lot of color depending on if it's the sun shining really brightly on something or if it's a really dark day or they're in shadow. Silhouettes can really quickly help you to figure out which kind of bird or group of birds that you're looking at, and then you can narrow it down from there. Um, then you can also look at the size of birds that you know well against the size of a bird that you're looking at, and compare them to try to narrow it down again. Um, it's good to try to um, really focus on those groups and then narrow it down from there. And then once you get those size and shape skills um, intact, you can use those skills to measure the bird against itself. So a lot of times there are birds that look very similar. For instance, the downy and the hairy woodpecker. And one of the best ways to tell them apart is by looking at the size of their bill as compared to the size of their head. So if you look at the downy woodpecker, its bill is about half the length of its head, whereas if you look at the hairy woodpecker, its bill and head are similar, about the same length. So you can use both different birds as your little ruler in the field or the bird against itself. You can also look at things like how long the legs are, how long the neck is, how far the tail extends down the body. Just things like that are really great clues to narrow down who that bird is. Behavior and color are also, like I said, great ways to help with bird identification. Where a bird was and what it was doing are really important clues. And looking at those basic color patterns is also a really helpful first step. So behavior, you'll look at posture, how a bird like presents itself. You can learn to distinguish many birds that are similarly proportioned just by the way that they sit or move as they're going around, like horizontal versus vertical posture, and things like that. And then you kind of get like an impression of the bird, like looking at it. If it seems like inquisitive, it might be a chickadee. If it's kind of leaning forward, it might be a crow. Or if it's really sitting up kind of stiffly and assertively, it might be a robin. Um, if you can see like how its eyes are moving, if it's really like darting around and watching like insects, that might be a flycatcher. Um, and if it's s- kind of nervous, then you might look around and see if there's some other bird or a predator that it's looking for. And those are usually smaller birds, like kinglets are kind of like skittish. Um, and then as you see a sitting bird start to move, it'll give you a new set of clues for what it is. So you'll get to see how it ru how it moves, like the rhythm of its movements, or how it flies, things like that. So like birds that are on the water, like ducks. Mallards and pintails, they're dabbling ducks, so they'll kind of tip up to reach submerged vegetation. But other ducks that are diving ducks, like redheads, will just dive down and will totally disappear from your sight. So those will be clues that you can use. And some other things, like on the slide here, like mourning doves usually have, you can notice them by their tiny heads, and then they have like bigger bodies. Finches have a flatter head and a thick beak. Um, Things like that can help you to really narrow it down. Um, so every bird that you see is also in your field guide. So that's a good thing to take along, or to have an app that you can use when you're out in the field to help you narrow it down once you get those first things going. So try to always, though, focus on patterns instead of trying to like match each color feather, and look at things like if it's light brown or dark brown or things like that. Focus on that other overall color pattern. Um, Remember that birds molt and that their feathers wear, so they're not never going to look exactly like the picture in your field guide. Um, colors fade. When you're far away, things are lighter or darker. So try to look at those patterns and things like that. But then other times there's really great, like outrageous colors that can help you to look too. Many birds are dark above and pale below. Um, that or the opposite to help them to avoid predators. Um, some birds have really bright patches of colors, like red-winged blackbirds that have those shoulder patches. The rose-breasted grosbeak, which has this beautiful rose breast. Goldfinches with their black caps. Those are things that we can watch for. Um, and there's also confusing bird species. That look like they have almost the exact same markings. But if you look a little closer, you can narrow it down. So, young Cooper's hawks and sharp-shinned hawks are really, really similar. But if you look at the streaking on their breasts, it can help you to narrow it down. In Cooper's hawks, the streaking tends to be narrower and more delicate, while as the sharp-shinned hawks tends to be more broad or blurrier. And then you can look at patterns. That's really important for ducks because you're often looking at them from a long way off. So just focusing on those kinds of things. And another thing I always try to tell everyone is just try to, when you're learning birds, learn a few at a time that are familiar ones that keep coming and you keep seeing, and then use those clues that you used for them to narrow down other birds that you see. Um, Having a good idea of the names of bird parts is also helpful because when you're looking in your field guide, it will tell you about specific markings like on parts of the wing or things like eye rings or eye lines, rump patches, and sometimes it'll even tell you to look at the primary coverts might be white, things like that. So just knowing some of those parts of a bird is really important when you're going out there and then trying to use your field guide to determine what the bird is. And then habitat is super important. A lot of birds are super choosy about their habitat, so that can really help you narrow down your list. So always keep in mind where you are. And this includes where they find their food and water, where they nest, where they forage, and where they hide from predators. So, think of habitats as collections of plants like grasslands or woodlands, um, but also think of the birds that are in there as like a collection of little birds that can move from one habitat to the other because some birds use different habitats. So, just like I said, make sure that you note the habitat that you're in, and then that can give you a clue about what kind of birds you're most likely to see there. Um, for example, like if you look in your field guide, you'll see lots of sparrows with rusty heads, but you can use habitats. And probability to kind of winnow that down. So if your sparrow is hiding in a bunch of reeds and it's probably going to be a swamp sparrow. Um, if it's hopping around at the base of a pine in a pine woods, it's more likely to be something like a chipping sparrow. And if it's singing on a fence row, it's more likely to be something like a field sparrow. Um, but again, you have to really think about all of those things. And that's another way that you can use is to listen to their songs and their calls, and that can help you as well. Um, and you can also use range maps. You don't have to try to keep straight every bird in your field guide. Maybe look before you go to see if those birds that are usually around in the summer are still here in the winter and things like that so that you can narrow down how many birds you're looking for. Um, Birds do stray from those ranges on the range maps, and that's part of the fun is trying to figure it out. But remember, you're kind of birding by probability. So first, compare your bird against what's likely to be present, and then if nothing matches, start taking notes and go back and look in your field guide. But really remember to check the time of year. Um, and also to find out what you're most likely to see when you go out. You can use eBird to make a list of what you're going to see, and you can also use the Merlin app to see what's most likely to be seen in the area and things like that. So that can help you to narrow down that list before you even go out. Another thing that you can do to help you to identify birds is to learn bird songs and calls. Um, so which birds sing? Most birds are dependent on vocal communication to some extent, whether that's the simple Phoebe of the Eastern Phoebe or complex, more high trills and things like that of the winter wren. Um, they have calls and songs and things like that. So calls are the shorter, simpler things that are less likely to be used just for mates and can be used during most of the year. They call for many purposes. They call when they find food. They call to attract their offspring. Nestlings have begging calls. There are alarm calls and mobbing calls. Um, all sorts of things. Blue jays tell the whole forest when you walk on the trail, things like that. And then songs are generally more of the complex um, sounds that the birds make, and often these are learned. Sometimes they are long and loud, and sometimes songs can serve multiple purposes. Songs can be territorial songs, and may declare a territory to rivals, and also try to get those potential mates. Depending on the where the bird sings it within the territory can also depend on what that bird's song means to other birds. Um, Not all members of the same species sound the same. Birds have different dialects, just like humans do. So there are regional variations. But it's always important to pay attention to where you are. Look at those habitat clues. If you hear a bird sound that you don't know, just try to think of where you are, what time of year it is, and that can help to narrow down those possibilities. Um, when do you hear the most birds? A lot of birds sing throughout the day, and some even sing at night. But there's a really best time of day um, is in the morning. There's a thing called the dawn chorus, which starts about an hour before sunrise when birds begin singing, when there's just enough light to see. Many of the species of birds sing at a faster rate at dawn than at other times of the day. And some birds even use different songs. We're not exactly sure why. It might be the best time of day to attract mates. It might be a important time of day to defend their territory. Um, it might be the most calm part of the day, or it might be that that's a way that they can spend their energy when it's not a good time to forage. We do know it's a great time for us to go out and practice listening to the birds in the morning. So that's really fun. Um, let's see, else do I want to say here? I think that's all. Then another really cool thing when you are learning bird songs is you can learn them and watch what they look like. So visualizing bird sounds. This is photos of a spectrogram from a northern cardinal. I love to use these. Spectrograms show the time from left to right. Um, the pitch is shown, the low is at the bottom and the high is at the top. And then the brighter the color is, the louder the sound is. So that they stimulate the visual parts of our brain and help us to commit those song patterns to memory. And that's why many birders use them. So it's one thing that helps me. It may or may not help you, but it's another thing that you can try when you're trying to learn the songs. Some common terms that are related to birding by ear. Um, Tempo is the song's speed or pace. Pitch is the song's frequency that we hear when we're listening to it. This is the high to low, and this can also change over the course of the song. Volume is basically how loud it is. Rhythm, that's how the tempo of the notes and pauses changes during the song. You can think of it kind of like as the arrangement or the pattern of the song. Repetition. Many songs contain repetition or duplicated notes or phrases. Um, it can be a great clue in identifying tricky songs. Um, let's see, what else? Trill. Did I say trill? No. Trill, some songs can be described as a trill, which is a series of similar notes or phrases repeated, basically too fast to count, and they're often at the same pitch. And then the last thing to listen to is the tone quality, and that's kind of the overall impression of the sound or the bird's voice. So, like, things phrases that would describe that would be like whistling or harsh or scratchy, flute like. Some people say like the sweet sound. So you can have fun with these descriptions because it's super subjective. And it's not really measurable like pitch or tempo. So just think of words that it, to describe it best for yourself, because this is all for you to help you learn. Um, Mnemonics are another way to remember songs. They're little phrases or other devices that again help you to commit these things to memory. Um, you've probably used mnemonics before to help you memorize things like the months of the year or the order of the planets. And they can really help you to learn bird songs. So, for example, northern cardinals, both males and females sing. And the song is kind of a loud string of clear two-parted whistles. Um, they can sometimes be slurred, but it often speeds up and then it ends in a slower trill. Um, these songs usually last 2 to 3 seconds, And sometimes it can sound like the bird is singing cheer, 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 or birdie, birdie, birdie. And the males in particular may sing this throughout the year. But the peak of singing is in the spring of summer and summer. And I'll play you a couple songs. And then calls of the cardinals. Scientists have described at least 16 different calls for the northern cardinal. Um, but the one you'll probably hear the most is kind of like a chip sound. They make this sound when they're warning intruders off of their territory, when they see predators near, females as they approach their nest, and both sexes will make this sound as they carry food to the nest, or when they're trying to get nestlings to leave the nest. Um, Another time that they'll make these chip sounds is when one of the pair is about to feed the other. Um, and they make other kinds of sounds as well, but here is the call sound. So, for the rest of the program, I'm just going to tell you and show you and play you some songs and calls of some of the common backyard birds that you might hear this winter. Um, and just remember, if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A as we go along. So this first bird is a red-breasted nuthatch. Their songs are a fast series of kind of horn-like sounds. They kind of sound like they're saying gank, gank, gank. They can have six or more of these notes, and they can just keep repeating them over and over and over again. The unmated males sing the most frequently. Um, and males and females both sometimes sing a similar version of this song when they're defending their territory, but it's usually a slower version. So here's their song. And then they have a similar song for their call. And this can be for communicating between the pair. Um, they can speed it up so it kind of sounds like a trill. They usually give this call near the nest at the beginning of egg laying. Um, and they may also make a little call that sounds like they're going pew pew. When they're agitated, they can also make like a wren kind of scolding call. So this is one of the calls. Maybe. There we go. Our next bird is the black-capped chickadee. These are pretty much everywhere. Their song is a simple, um, kind of whistle, two or three note Phoebe, Phoebe, or sometimes people think it sounds like they're saying, "Hey, sweetie." Um, Most of the time, males begin singing in mid-January, and the song increases as winter progresses. They'll sing more frequently, and females also occasionally sing their song. And then their call is a chickadee-dee-dee call, where the number of dee-dee notes increases when they're alarmed. They also have a couple other calls. They make a high-pitched C as an alarm call, and when predators are detected. Um, Chickadee nestlings make a really loud, like hissing sound inside their nest cavity when intruders look in. So even the little ones make sounds. Um, you can use your new skill of measuring a bird by itself to figure out who this is. The clue is that the bill measures only about half the length of its head. And if you guessed it's a downy woodpecker, you are right. So the downy woodpecker has a call that kind of is a whinnying call, and it is made by both sexes. You'll hear it in deciduous forests during the breeding season, um, and it usually lasts about 2 seconds. Um, Really excited birds also make a very sharp, like, beak note occasionally that they repeat several times. They also make other sounds by drumming on trees to claim territories, attract mates, and signal that they're ready for mating. Um, they also make a kind of a wing ruffling sound when they're in flight, so you can listen for that as well. This is the tufted titmouse. Their song is fast, repeated, clear sounding Peter, 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 Peter. Um, they repeat this up to 11 times for up to 35 songs delivered in a minute. Females occasionally deliver a quiet song, a version of the song. Their calls are really nasal. It's kind of a scratchy chickadee-like call that's most common. They also give scolding calls when predators are sighted, and they have like a harsher distress call when they think that they're in danger. This is another nuthatch, the white-breasted nuthatch, and it makes kind of a similar sound, that gank, 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 but it sounds more like it's more nasally, like it's being sung through the nose. Here's another test of your new measuring skills. This bill measures about the same length as the head. And if you guessed the hairy woodpecker, you've got it. Um, they give short, sharp peak note that's very similar to the downy woodpecker, but it's slightly lower pitched and I don't know, it sounds more emphatic. Here's one that's probably familiar, but some people forget that they're around during the winter. This is an American goldfinch. The males sing a long and variable series of twitters and warbles. It can be several seconds long, and they are repeated in kind of a random order. They actually continue to learn different song patterns throughout their life. So remember, if it has feathers, it's a bird, so try to identify it. Birds are the only living creatures with feathers. Feathers are made of keratin, the same protein that makes up their beaks, lizard scales, mammal hair, human fingernails, animal hooves, and horns. Feathers help birds fly, keep them warm and dry, and the color patterns of feathers, called the plumage, can help them stay camouflaged, find mates, or help us to identify them. Um, and some birds have really cool modified feathers that fit particular functions, like the fancy feathers on a peacock's tail. So, keep that in mind. Look at those beautiful feathers when you get a chance. Just a quick note on binoculars. Um, in this picture, I pointed out the numbers on the center dial of this pair, 8 by 42. The 8 is the magnification and the 42 is the lens diameter. So the bigger the difference between the two numbers, the brighter the image. But if the lens diameter is greater than 50, the binoculars will be really heavy, and if it's less than 30, there won't be enough light getting in. So most birders choose full-size binoculars with a center focus dial of 8 by 40 to 45 or 10 by 30 to 35. And there's a lot of information online that can help you to pick binoculars that are right for you. Um, Now that you know how to identify birds, using some simple clues, consider joining other birders February 14th through 17th for the Great Backyard Bird Count. This year celebrates the 28th anniversary of people coming together to watch and learn about and celebrate birds. Um, so they use eBird. Which is a really huge worldwide database. It stores over 100 million bird sightings, I think, each year have been contributed, and it's used by professionals for science and conservation. Um, it's a global event, and it's really fun. If you already are a little bit of a better birder, you can just go on and use your eBird account to submit a list for the Great Backyard Bird Count. So it's really cool. You can actually put your birds on the map by joining this. And if you want to join, look for more information at birdcount.org. And keep sharing your bird sightings, even if you go to the bird count, keep sharing all through the year, especially on eBird or iNaturalist. It really helps to document bird distribution, abundance, habitat use, and trends. And the data collected really helps scientists to make things like conservation decisions, helps them to write papers, helps thousands of students do their research projects, and it really helps to inform birds research worldwide. So if you like doing that kind of stuff, even out in your own backyard, or when you're in the pine bush, you can really help shape bird conservation by using those apps. Um, so that's all I have for now. Thanks again for joining me tonight. I hope you all really enjoyed the class. Um, if you have any questions, remember to put them in the Q&A before you sign off. And don't forget to sign up for the answer session once the webinar is done. A pop-up screen will give you an opportunity to register for the January 27th program. And Wendy has put a link in the chat if you want to just go in there. I'll answer any questions you had tonight. And don't forget to come visit us at the Pine Bush. We'd love to see you in person. Check out our science lecture series, our community science opportunities, and the many upcoming fun educational programs on our website. If you enjoyed this program, there are so many things coming up. For instance, next week there's a full moon hike at Kings Highway on Monday night. We'll have the first talk of the 2025 science lecture series about some archaeological research done in the Pine Bush on Thursday, the 16th at 7. Um, it'll focus on recent research by the University at Albany's field school in the summer of 2024. Um, if you can join us in person again, we're offering a winter bird walk on Friday, January 17th at 11 a.m. Fluff up your feathers and come explore birds of the pine bush in winter. Um, and on Saturday, January 18th, at 1, you can learn about the natural history of the pine bush at Discover the Pine Bush of Carner Barrens. At the end of the month, if you want to celebrate Squirrel Appreciation Day, come join us on Monday the 20th to see a short film about squirrels and the secrets to their success. We'll have a nature sketching event um, on January 23rd. On January 24th, we'll have an event about coyotes. Some more bird-related events that are coming up are get ready for the Great Backyard Bird Count, Winter Bird ID and Walk on February 9th at 8 a.m. And community science training opportunities coming up about birds. American Woodcock training is on April 17th. Eastern Whippoorwill training is on May 8th. And there are tons of other things happening all the time at the Pine Bush. Visit the Discovery Center and our 12 trails 7 days a week. Bring your friends and family to Night at the Discovery Center on Wednesday, February 19th. Check out our website. We have tons of cool stuff coming again up. And just thanks again, everyone, for coming. I hope to see you soon, and I hope to see many of you back at the question answer session later this month. So thanks again. I'm really glad that you came. Bye-bye.